Hello everybody, MegaZardX here, back at it again to give y'all another very exciting video. And yes, with the year of 2025 currently ongoing, I always have to take a step back and look at what we managed to get in the previous year in terms of all of the great, amazing games, so that way we can kind of appreciate what we're about to get in this upcoming year of 2025. And yes, I'm referring to my game of the year picks for the year of 2024. It's that time of year, and you know what, there's a lot of great games that came out last year though, so I figured in today's video I might as well go ahead and share all the great games that I managed to get throughout my whole entire list for 2024. And this is going to be divided up into two different categories right here. I'm going to go through my honorable mentions. It's not going to be listed in any kind of particular order and stuff. And then I'll go through and pick my top 3 games of the year. We'll go from 3 to 2 to 1. So that's just going to be the format for today's video though. But if you hadn't already done so, make sure you go and hit that like button. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight up into this video. Alright, so to kick things off for the first honorable mention, I have to go ahead and nominate the Apollo Justice Ace Attorney trilogy. Now, this trilogy right here holds a very special place in my heart. When you look at most of the games I usually resonate really well with, it's usually typically RPGs when I was younger, a little bit more so on the platforming side of things though, but RPGs is usually like my main bread and butter, and I'll do some occasional stuff here on the side though, shooting games maybe with like a series like Splatoon or whatnot though. The visual novels isn't necessarily a one where you would think I'll just go out there and constantly play them though, but Ace Attorney series was definitely that turning point for me, and I love the heck out of the first 3 games. So when Capcom came around and said, hey, we're going to go ahead and give y'all the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th game in the series that was on the 3DS originally, and we're going to go ahead and remaster these, put them up in HD and stuff, add some extra things up in there, a little bit of extra voice acting, some anime cutscenes and stuff, just kind of round out the whole entire experience. I said, sign me up, Capcom, sign me up though, because man, oh man, I can't ever get enough of Ace Attorney though. And I was kind of curious to see where Phoenix Wright's journeys and stuff was going to continue on from the continuation from that last game in the original trilogy though. We managed to get the inclusion of Apollo, who is one of Phoenix Wright's new proteges in the in the attorney business and stuff, and it was kind of interesting to see how that 4th game play out and the way how they kind of managed to bring him into the limelight and stuff. Phoenix Wright definitely took like a more of a backseat though, but by the time you went through the case 1, 2, 3 and got to the 4th one, oh man, it was so satisfying. You roll that over into case number 5 though, then you managed to get the inclusion of Athena Sykes, who's like a really nice spunky girl, and I always like the inclusion of her. She managed to bring a lot of comedy relief and such like that. So I loved all the experiences and some of the twists they managed to put up in that 5th game though. But that 6th game though, Spirit of Justice, oh my goodness though, I think that's when Phoenix Wright started to shine the best, along with Apollo and Athena. They were also there for support along the way though, but man, I just love seeing how they managed to bring back even older characters from the first 3 games in the series though, and managed to tie everything together though. So I was trying to kind of beat around the bush a little bit though, because with a visual novel series and such, like you can get into spoilers really quick though, but I was just kind of pushing those thoughts to the side though. But if you had or have ever played any of the Apollo Justice games or just Ace Attorney in general though, like man, you're in for a good time though. All of these different murder mysteries and stuff, they always manage to keep your head up on the swivel though. You're always gonna have a great time playing any one of these games though. So for that reason alone, hey, it was like one of the few games in terms of Switch game that I managed to get over like 60 plus hours. So on that fact alone, it had to make a appearance somewhere in this video though. So honestly, that was some really great stuff right there. Now continuing on to the next honorable mention, it's none other than Another Crab's Treasure. On the surface level, you wouldn't think that this would be a game for me. I tried to play games such as like Dark Souls and stuff like that whenever, it was like on the Switch and stuff. I dabble with some stuff like that here and there though, but that Souls-like formula, having to bash your head up against a boss time after time after time. Look, I don't even like it when I have to challenge a boss, even in a standard RPG, so many times and stuff. Like once I get to like time number 4, like what the heck? Like I'm just like, hey, just do or die at this point though. But Another Crab's Treasure, I would categorize that as like a light version of a Souls-like, just enough to where you can kind of get the feel of a Souls-like, but not too much to the point where it's going to be punishing you in an excruciating way to where it's like, all right, I just don't want to pick up this game again though. It just had that nice little bit of an addictive charm to it though. And obviously with this one, it wasn't just only on the Souls-like side, you also had the platforming side as well. So it's like you kind of had a little bit of a 50-50. So it's like, even though you might have to, go through and beat a boss and try it several different times though, you got rewarded with it because after that, then you got into some platforming stuff. And, from what I typically kind of see or hear from most people, is like if there's typically platforming in a general Souls-like game, it usually doesn't perform or execute on it nearly as well as like for a game like this though. And with it being, an indie game in general though, like I don't normally go through and play a lot. I try to at least play at least a couple or at least one every year though, but this one was checking off all the boxes up on this thing though. And also, if you have ever heard of that soundtrack from this game though, like, oh my goodness, there's no reason for some of the music and stuff to bop nearly as hard though, but you're literally going around playing as a crab, trying to find your shell and stuff that got stolen from you in the very beginning of the game. And you're just trying to go throughout this whole entire adventure and, you do a little bit of self-discovery and stuff. And there's a whole lot more. I won't go too deep up on it though, but if you're itching for a Souls-like, but not one that's too difficult for you to handle, I will highly recommend Another Crab's Treasure for you. All right, and then moving on to the very last honorable mention, I will say this. All of these things are not in any particular order though, but with this one particular game in general, man, oh man, it was very close to being the top 3 game of the year though. But regardless to say, this pick goes to none other than Astro Bot. Astro Bot is a game that I feel like Sony really needs to pay very close attention. There's a reason why it won Game of the Year at the Jeff Keighley Awards, though while it's not necessarily one of my personal top 3 games of the year, it was really close for it being there. And the fact that it was able to do that for it being a Sony game, where typically, you might expect one of their games to happily pop up in usually a lot of different, people's personal Game of the Years. The fact that it's a platformer, it's not necessarily a giant AAA to the level of like a Horizon, a God of War, or even like a Marvel Spider-Man or anything like that. The fact that it was a small platformer and it's based upon a little dude that should be the mascot of PlayStation, but I digress though, it's kind of shocking, especially considering the fact that the failure of Concord that happened, a little bit, a couple months earlier before this game managed to come out though. But regardless to say though, oh my goodness gracious, this is such a really great, charming game. While I was going through and playing this game, I got a lot of vibes from Mario games, particularly Mario Galaxy and Mario Galaxy 2, because it always felt like Astro Bot was either getting some new kind of equipment or something like that, like a monkey backpack or whatever, where you're able to like tilt the Joy-Con left and right, or maybe he soaks up a bunch of water, so then now you're rolling around with a big old fat Astro Bot just trying to traverse through the level and stuff like that, or you get like a really spiky ball or something like that, and then it makes the gravity really heavy on you, so you're starting to roll around and crush enemies. Like I felt like the different things that they were able to execute and the different ideas were very akin to a Mario Galaxy game, and it just felt like the ideas kept on coming. Now most of the levels, granted, it wasn't necessarily trying to push the boundaries or anything like that, like kind of get like really aggressive in the sense of like, oh, you got to monitor all your lives and stuff. There's like numerous checkpoints usually throughout the whole entire levels though. However, there are a bit of challenging levels throughout your whole entire experience where you're able to encounter some levels here and there which actually are going to grind your teeth just a little bit, where it's like, dang, I knew I could have got to the end though. You can have a little bit of that tough grind up in there though, but overall it's a very pleasant experience from start to finish. They even went back and added in additional DLC, some stuff I still need to go back through and play, like with the winter levels and stuff and some of the speed level challenges and whatnot though. But overall, Astro Bot was a very nice, pleasant experience. I did like the inclusion of all the different bots that you were able to go through and collect in the game, and it made a lot of different callbacks to Sony's history with their first party IPs, as well as some other well-known third party titles as well, just via the bots or some of the level inspiration with it in the game itself though. So overall, I really love this game from start to finish though. A lot more people need to go through and play it. And hey, look, if you have a PS5 and you have not managed to buy this game yet, you're sleeping. You're sleeping, all right? And you're resting on your morals, man, because you should have this game though. But I digress though. But that is just a phenomenal game, and it rightfully deserves a spot on my honorable mention list. All right, now the gloves are off. We're in the top 3 list for my personal picks for Game of the Year. And starting in at spot number 3, we had none other than Persona 3 Reload. Persona 3 Reload. Now, coming right off the heels of Persona 5 Royal, that was my first introduction into the Persona series. I always heard really good things about Persona 3 as well as Persona 4 though, but whenever Atlus came out and said, hey look, we're gonna go ahead and just remake Persona 3, I was like, heck yes, this will be a great jumping in point for me to play this game though, because obviously there's like 3 different versions of Persona 3 at this point. There's like the original vanilla version, there's also the Fez content, which is like the extra little bit that they managed to add on to the base game of the story, and then they had all of the exclusive portable stuff with like the female character and all of that stuff though. So it was like, well, what the heck? They don't really even have a definitive edition though. But by the time we managed to get the release of this, and by the time we had all the DLC, we had the best of the vanilla and the Fez content. But unfortunately, we didn't get all of the portable content with the female character. You win some battles, you lose some battles though. But overall, don't let that, discourage you at all though, because what the story that they're able to tell within Persona 3 Reload, it's very charming. Now, granted, there's not a lot of like, you had that Persona formula up in here where it's like, hey, you got to build up your social links and stuff. You got to, go through and traverse. You got to beat some different shadows and such like that. And in this game, you're going through and traversing through Tartarus, which you're going, floor after floor after floor, and you're working your way up throughout this whole entire calendar year that you're also attending school and such. And in this game, there's typically, or just in Persona series in general, there's like general themes that you're walking away with within each one of these games though. But like in Persona 3, the main moral of the story is about, what you can manage to do with your life, the importance of your life and the meaning of it, along with your connections and ties with other people and such though. And by the time I managed to get through and traverse from the very beginning of this game to the very end, it did manage to hit me in the feels. Not nearly as strong as Persona 5 though, but rightfully so. Like, it managed to hit me down to my core, respectfully so. And I was like, man, by the time I, finished that game, I was like, man, that really managed to do some stuff for me. I loved all the different characters you had up in here. The social links and stuff was great. I always loved the voice acting and stuff. They did manage to change it from the original baseline game to what we managed to get in this game though. But regardless, I loved all the different performances and everything else that, that was encompassed within this game as well though. And honestly, if you hadn't managed to put your hands on Persona 3 Reload, I highly recommend this game, because honestly, I don't even know how in the world it didn't get nominated for anything in the Game of the Year or Game Awards discussion with the Jeff Keighley show. I don't know how that thing got snubbed at all. It's almost like people just forgot about it and, just kind of got sucked into like recency bias, because I know this game came out all the way at the very beginning of February though. But regardless to say, this is a really great game, and it rightfully deserves my number 3 spot. All right, moving on up to my spot number 2. It comes down to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now look, whenever I heard about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and it was coming out literally on a leap year day, in the month of February, that early on in 2024, I was like, am I already looking at my Game of the Year contender? And for a good chunk of 2024, that was definitely the case though, because this is, Final Fantasy VII open up. Like, while we were going through and playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, that was all confined into Midgar, which was like, the first 5 hours of the game or so in the original version. Ballooned out and blown up to like at least about 40 hours or so though. But I was always itching and craving, like, man, what is beyond these walls of Midgar though? And once they finally opened up the floodgates, I was like, heck freaking yes though. Obviously you had the the inclusion of Cloud, Tifa, Barrett, all of the original crew up in there that you managed to play through the first game though. But then you also had the inclusions of Red 13, Cait Sith, and I was like, I love the way how both of those two characters played, particularly Red 13. He was my go-to person in a lot of different fights and battles and boss battles and everything else in between though. But I loved all the different characters. I love all of the voice acting and stuff that was portrayed up in there. The side quests, which, typically I'm not necessarily a big fan of side quests though, but I did a good chunk of them while going through and playing this game. Now, granted, some of the mission stuff, like where you're going around talking with Chadley though, oh my goodness gracious, Chadley. Hey, at least they toned that man down quite a bit though, because in that first game, he was literally unbearable, mind you, at that though. But I mean, there was a lot of different stuff that they kind of added in here that added a little bit of fluff though. But I mean, if you just go through and cherry pick and do what you want to do, just to kind of complete some stuff here and there, accumulate a little bit of extra money and such, then hey, it's still a pretty great experience though. I mean, there's a lot to explore within that open world, and literally like, hey, between you traveling on the chocobos, running on foot, or traversing on the different kind of vehicles, once you manage to unlock them, it's like, oh man, it's just really good. And I hadn't even touched about just the story itself. I won't really go up in it though, because I know there's probably some people that hadn't managed to go through and play through the game even at this point in the game though. But regardless of say, it does some stuff, especially in the final third act of the game though. Some things I just kind of wasn't necessarily expecting, and definitely making some ties over to like Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, which I certainly wasn't really expecting it though, but kind of seeing it how it all played out, I was like, you know what, I'm kind of glad that they made some ties to that game. It technically is in a lot of ways like a prequel game and whatnot though, but overall I love my experience from start to finish though. If you hadn't played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth at this point, whether it be PC, PlayStation, or whatever though, like you need to manage to get your hands up on this game, because this is a really great, fun, and phenomenal game. All right, and then we finally come down to the last game, the number one pick for my personal pick for game of the year, and that is none other than Metaphor ReFantazio. ReFantazio was a game that I felt literally came out of left field. Look here, Atlus already delivered on my number 3 game of the year with Persona 3 Reload. I wasn't nearly expecting them to actually come out and say, hey, we also have one more game out here. It's a brand new IP. It's technically our anniversary project, which makes a lot of different callback to a lot of other games that we had made as Atlus, callbacks to Persona, callback to, Soul Hackers and stuff, callback to Shin Megami Tensei and everything else in between though. Like, what the heck? I was certainly not expecting it. I still had my eye on it for the longest time, as they were kind of doing like their own special presentations and stuff, or directs if you want to call them that. And I kind of kept my eye on it though, and I was like, there's a good chance I might pick this up, but maybe not at launch. And I remember it came out on the same day as Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, so most of my focus went to that game though. But luckily, I managed to pick up the game after Black Friday, roughly in the month of December, and I really started tearing into it though. And man, you got yourself a game when you could put down the game, you go to bed, you wake up, you go to work or school in the morning, and then you're like, man, I really wish I was playing game X. If a game has you by the hook that much, where you start thinking about it, start implementing strategies or what you want to do or what you want to explore next while you're not even playing the game, that's a really great aspect, that the game has that good hook factor to kind of bring you back into the fold. So that way, it just kind of keeps you motivated, keeps you on and going, kind of makes you want to keep delving into what makes this game so good. And that's what Metaphor ReFantazio has done for me though. And man, currently right now, I still hadn't even gone through and beaten the whole game though, but I'm in like the very last month of the game though. And I'm knocking on the doorstep of like almost 100 hours. Like, I think I'm a little north of like 80. I think when it's all said and done, I probably will hit 100 hours up into this game though. But that's how good this game is. Now, granted, I'm a really big fan of games that are typically in that 40-hour range though. But if you can manage to get up in that, that higher epsilon of like 60 hours plus, as long as you have the content to go, then hey, I'm all for the challenge, and I welcome it fully though, because it felt like with Metaphor ReFantazio, they managed to keep adding layer after layer after layer. The combat and stuff is great. It allows you to get up into your battles. The battles don't feel like they overstay their welcome. Maybe a little bit in terms of a boss battle, but you expect that though. But while you're just going through and grinding in the dungeon, just traversing through it, I mean, yes, you can get in and out of your battles though. Something that I wish Mario and Luigi Brothership would really take note of, though. Oh my gosh, them load times, though. But I digress, though. Between all of that, the social links, my only little nitpick is I wish all the social links were able to, be fully voiced. Like, they get voiced in the first part, they get voiced at the very end, but not so much in the middle. A little bit disappointing. But outside of that, I mean, I love all the characters and stuff. The voice acting was great. I mean, Heisman, man, hearing that dude's voice, I was like, man, that dude is just so cool, though. And between Stroll and Hulkenberg and stuff. And I won't say too much more beyond that because for those that might not gone through and played through the game, though. But regardless to say, by the time you hit to the very end of it, man, you have a really strong crew of characters, though. And there were some moments where I was like, okay, maybe I might have got shook up just a little bit, but not too terribly so, though. But at least it got me to feel in the department, though. And if you can get me to start to feel, you start to get a lot of my attention right there, though. So between all of that, regardless to say, man, oh man, Metaphor ReFantazio was, I feel like, the sleeper hit for me. And it literally slapped me away once I managed to go through and play this game, though. But if you hadn't paid attention to that game, I highly suggest you do a little bit of digging, do a little bit of research, because it might be a game meant for you. All right, and that just about does it in terms of all of my personal picks for Game of the Years. Quite a bit of stuff in terms of my honorable mentions, as well as my top 3 picks of the year, though. I didn't think Atlus would come out swinging that hard in 2024. With 2 hits, they managed to hit my top 3 list, though. Astrobot was really close. Like, I kind of wish it was in my top 3, though, but like those Atlus games, though, there was just a lot of meat on the bone. Kind of hard to kind of push it away, though. But no knock against Astrobot, though, because if one of those games happened to get delayed in 2025, easily it would have been up there with all the rest, though. But overall, 2024 was a kind of a mixed year in terms of, just a lot of big, heavy, major hitters. Like, notice how in my top, well, technically it's like top 6 kind of ish. But in all of those 6 games I talked about, none of them were Nintendo games. Don't get me wrong. Paper Mario Thousand Year Door was really good. I love my experience with Emil the Smiling Man, along with Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. All great games, though, but they weren't good enough to trump any of those previous 6 that I happened to mention, though. We kind of knew Nintendo was going to have a little bit of an off year this year, though, but it kind of goes without saying, though, at least by the time you look at my list, though. But I'm also curious to hear about all of your lists down below. What were some of your top 3 games of the year? Or do you have any honorable mentions with any other games that you might have been playing throughout the year of 2024? You just gotta let me know down below. But that's gonna basically do it in terms of my picks for Game of the Year for 2024. So if you really like this video, make sure you're going to hit that like button. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. If you want to become a channel member just to support the channel just a little bit more, then feel free to hit that join button link down below. So remember, y'all, until our video I make next, see y'all.